Thank you all for inviting me here today to talk to you about the importance of biosecurity to our business, in particular as banana farmers. I think without biosecurity, the banana industry would look very different today, and that's through the course of my talk today. I think I'll show that beyond reasonable doubt that having the biosecurity systems in place that we have today, it means that we have a banana industry that we have today. So a little bit about our business, or the banana industry I should say. The Australian banana industry is the largest single horticultural industry in Australia. It has a farm gate value of about $600 million. Last year produced 24 million cartons. Years gone by, that's been about 28 to 29 million cartons. That's about 380,000 tonnes. About 95% of the production is in far north Queensland, and 95% of that production is Cavendish Williams bananas, which is important to note. And the Australian banana industry is well represented in a lot of issues by the Australian Banana Growers Council. So a little bit about my background. I was born and raised on the Atherton Tablelands, and I've come from a large family. I've got 4 other brothers and 2 cousins who live on the farm next door, and I'm 4th generation. So my kids, if they decide to follow in my footsteps, will be 5th generation on the Atherton Tablelands. Finishing primary school, I went to boarding school down in Cairns at St Augustine's College, and then university down here in Brisbane at the University of Queensland, where I studied mechanical engineering. I got a job down here in Brisbane with Bovis Lendlease in construction management, working on a few projects in and around southeast Queensland. This is one in particular, the Aurora Tower on Queen and Wharf Street was my first project I worked on. A very exciting project. Met my wife at university. She was studying accounting and international business, and she got a job with KPMG down here in Brisbane as a graduate accountant. And we got married and moved to London in 2008. In 2011, fell pregnant with our daughter. Renee fell pregnant, and we had a choice to make. Do we stay in London? Do we move back to Brisbane, Sydney or Melbourne with our careers, with our jobs, or do we go back to the farm, back to the business, my family's business? My wife's family is also involved in the banana industry from down at Mission Beach. And we're lucky we had that choice, and we decided to give our kids the upbringing and the country upbringing that we had. So we decided to give our careers, put them on hold, or give them away, give up the rat race and go back to far north Queensland into the family business. So with an 8-week-old, we moved back from London in December 2011 back into the business. And my wife doesn't work in the business. She works for ANZ Bank, but some days she feels like she does. Background about Serra Farming, like I said, we're a family-owned and operated business on the Atherton Tablelands. We previously grew row cropping. We're in row cropping, potatoes, maize, peanuts, traditional row cropping on the Atherton Tablelands. In 2011, when I called family and said I'm coming back, they said we're going to plant bananas. So we got into bananas in June 2011, so just on 8 years. And avocados in 2013, we first planted our avocados. We also have a water drilling business, and this is one of the rigs working. We have two setups similar to that. So that's a large off-farm business as well. So this is the change. You can see the change over the last sort of 12, 14 years. The potatoes in the corner there, and now mostly bananas on the home farm, and avocados across 2 other farms close by. So this is 2 of my other brothers. We farm 85 hectares of bananas, 85 hectares of avocados. We employ around 50 people in the bananas, around 75 to 90 across the whole business, depending on the season. In the avocado season, we ramp up to probably close to 90 people. We supply 5% of Coles bananas nationally, and that's mostly to Sydney, and the avocados are down the east coast as well. Previous knowledge of biosecurity. Look, to me, biosecurity coming back into the business in 2011, it was a fancy word. It meant some things. It did mean we had exposure to it previously in our farming business, but not a lot of exposure. So in 2013, I was lucky enough to go to China and the Philippines on a grower study tour, and that was a real eye-opener for myself. There was 9 other banana growers on that tour, and we looked at the banana industries across China and the Philippines, but mostly in relation to Panama. It was not in Far North Queensland at the time, it was in Darwin. We thought a world away, but we went to those countries to have a look at the effects that it had on those industries. So China in 2011 produces 11 million tonnes. If you remember, I was saying Australia produced 380,000 tonnes. So China, I think, is the second largest producer in the world behind India of bananas, and they imported 1 million tonnes in 2017. India produces 9.6 million, and about 3.4 million tonnes of that goes for export. So very large producers in relation to our industry. And both of those countries have widespread TR4 in their major production areas. Hard to get a figure on those, on where and how much, but we know anecdotal evidence information is that it's fairly widespread across those countries. We saw in China little to no biosecurity in place. It's interesting their view on the banana industry. It's not a big, it is big industry, but it's not a staple of their diet. So the government's view is that if bananas disappear, the population won't starve. Rice and those sort of staples will keep the country going. So bananas is not a major staple part of their diet. So not a lot of emphasis on biosecurity. You can see in-field packing that we saw. That's because of the seasonality of the regions in China, in the production regions. They're very seasonal. So where we were here in Guangxi, they produce bananas through summer and autumn, and then through the other months they nurse sucker their bananas not to produce any fruit. They get fairly cool winters even down south there. And so all of their facilities are mobile packing facilities. Very effective, packing on the headlands. Their headlands are all concreted, but no consideration to any biosecurity there at all. And we saw in the paddock some bunting around a plant that we suspect was TR4. So an attempt at biosecurity, but not a big attempt. You can see 2 little patches there. You can see the areas we're talking about of production. It's just massive. And so we suspect those 2 areas, the little patches there, were the start of TR4. I think if you went back to that field now, it may probably not even be bananas. It's probably dragon fruit or papaya or something like that. The other picture is from Hainan Island. So we went down to Hainan Island, and this was a sort of a major part of our tour because it was a real eye-opener for us to see it firsthand. The producer of that in that orchard was pulling his bananas out. The orchard was almost finished and was planting papaya. There was it wasn't commercially viable for him to continue. It was a fairly large plantation, and so he let us go through and chop down plants and have a look at the internal symptoms of TR4, but it really hit home the effects of Panama on a business, on a farming business, on a producer, and what it can do. Like I said, it was up until that point we'd been having a fair bit of fun, and we'd looked at a lot of things across China and the industry, but this in particular was a real sort of eye-opener for us, and it was a pretty sombre experience. So coming back, the Philippines. So we went to the Philippines next, and we saw better biosecurity in the Philippines. Not the best, but better than what we were doing at the time in Australia, which was, for the most of us, it was very little to no biosecurity at all. So you can see a wheel spray there going into the port loading facility. Interesting, they had a tissue culture nursery, which is great for, it's been proven since in Australia that Panama won't survive through the tissue culturing process. But then they take the plants out and put them on the ground. Weed matting there, yes, but the possibility of infection from the soil on the ground is high. So and then we saw boot dips. So there's no tractors, no vehicles going through their orchards. So the chance of spreading is just by foot. So you to pass into that block there on that farm, you had to pass through a boot bath, which we thought was impressive. Coming back from that tour, I implemented some changes into our business, mainly around the induction. So we were asking people, where have you worked in the past? Have you worked on other banana farms? If yes, if any of those answers were yes, we'd take their boots and treat them and let them still use those boots, where we would treat them before they'd enter into the paddocks. we started thinking about how to protect our business should an incursion come into North Queensland. However, we didn't implement any of that, and I'll go into that a little further as to why. But like other banana growers at the time, we were faced by other challenges, and challenges that were probably higher on our priority list. And biosecurity was there. We were thinking about it, but in terms of doing all these, the fencing, the wheel dip and that, it was not deemed for us to be as important as some of the other issues. 4th of March 2015, that's the day that changed the industry forever. You do remember this is one of those events that you remember where you were at the time when you heard that news, and I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, and it was early in the day, and I knew straight away that we had to do something about it. In the back of my mind, I just kept remembering back, it had only been 2 years since I'd been to China and the Philippines, and I thought, how far is this spread? Where is it? Is it near to us? Yes, it's in Tully, but it could be next door. We just don't know. So a lot of things going through our mind at the time, very confusing time, very challenging time, not only for us, but for everyone in the industry. A little bit of background about TR4, I think most of you know about it. I don't want to go too much into detail, but just a bit of a background. It cannot be controlled or destroyed in the field. It lays dormant in the soil thanks to a Keynote spore for decades, even without the presence of bananas. I think in Central America they've laid fields dormant from bananas for 80 years, gone back in, and Panama is still there. Not TR4, but another form of Panama, it's still there. It's spread by the movement of infected plant materials, soil and water, which it involves all of that, and it affects all known varieties of edible commercial varieties of bananas, and eventually kills the plant. Global spread was first identified in Indonesia in 1993. It's almost certainly present before this time, possibly mistaken as subtropical race 4. It is believed to have been in Taiwan from the late 60s, and a recent detection in July this year in Latin America, in Colombia. It means now it's present in all production regions of the world, major producing regions of the world, which is a concern, especially in Africa in particular, where bananas in some of those countries is a staple of their diet. If that disappears, that's going to be a real concern. Our immediate response to TR4, so the day on the 4th of March in 2015, I knew that we had to do something straight away. And like I said, being exposed to the Panama and the effect in China and the Philippines, I knew that we had to exclude traffic straight away, and all unnecessary traffic, and treat any traffic coming into the farm. That was the #1 priority. So on the day of the detection, went out, bought some gates and put them at the front of the farm and closed the entrance off. So you still need traffic to come in and out of your property to operate. It's the same with any business. Farming's no different. You can't block all traffic, otherwise you wouldn't operate. In our business, unfortunately, the packing facility is right in the middle of the farm. So traffic does still have to come in and out to bring cartons and take fruit and fertiliser and the likes. So we excluded all unnecessary traffic. We placed a mateship footbath at the front of the farm, a top cut off a 44-gallon drum with some detergent in there was adequate for the time, and a manned decontamination wheel spray. So as you can see there, a 1,000-litre shuttle that was manned from that day until we were able to put something more permanent in place. We were lucky that we were able to that person could do another job, so it meant that we were able to do that and man that for 4 months. We then installed, in the first 6 months, we went out and assessed different wheel treatments, different vehicle treatments at the entrance of the farm. There's wheel sprays, there's a number of sprays. Keep the manned decontamination spray there, or a wheel dip. And we determined for our business the best option was a wheel dip. And again, every business is different. People will assess and come to different conclusions. I don't think there's a wrong answer to this. I think it's just what works for your business best. And for us, we determined that wheel dip was the best solution. We then went out and bought a freight container, a 20-foot freight container, and turned that into a boot change station at the front of the farm. It was a fairly cost-effective way to do that. And we fully fenced the farm. So we did that after the detection in Mareeba. We decided that it was too close and that pigs, we don't get a lot of pigs up in our area of the tablelands. We do get them, but not a lot, but wallabies and things like that. So we decided to fence the farm with 5,000 metres of pig-proof fencing. And full segregation of the farm, that's ongoing. We're not there yet. We're certainly not there yet. We've got temporary measures in place. You can see banana twine and some star pickets, and that is becoming permanent over time. But it works well, having a temporary structure, a temporary barrier in place. It still segregates traffic, and we can see if it works before we turn it into a permanent solution. So dealing with change, this is a big one with our business, and I think every business every banana producing business in particular. Humans are creatures of habit. We don't like change, and this example is no different. But I've learned over time, and our business has learned that when you initiate change, you're more in control of the outcome. So when you change ahead of needing to change, you're more in control of the outcome. So we knew that TR4 was going to change our industry, change our business, and we got on the front foot of that and initiated change and put things in place that we knew if we were to get TR4, we would have to have this in place to keep trading. We enacted change in our business early on, and it was difficult. Don't get me wrong, this change is difficult financially. It costs money. I'll go into the costs a little bit further along, but also emotionally, Mum and Dad still live on the farm, and Dad grew up on the farm. He was born on the farm next door. So changing the way they just come in and out of the farm every day, going through boot dips and wheel dips and having the farm fenced off was a real mindset change for them, and difficult for them to come to terms with. And I think that's not just our business, I think that's in general across the industry, is that, farming is, you have a sense of freedom, and all of a sudden you have to close your farm off and have it secure, biosecure, and again, it's just a change that some people deal with better than others. So within our business, how's it changed over time? So we had some awareness of biosecurity prior to the incursion of TR4. We grew potatoes, like I said earlier, and the seed, we used to, 15, 20 years ago, we used to treat that seed with a mercury fungicide. A lot of that seed was coming up from Tasmania. And we looked, and later we grew Kifler potatoes, and we looked at exporting those into New Zealand and other places. And so we had exposure to protocols around if we were to export those. We didn't go ahead with that. We got out of potatoes before we decided to go ahead with that. Pests and diseases could be controlled by chemicals. I think this is an important one. I think farming in the last 50, 100 years, we've been led to believe that any sort of pest and disease that come up, hey, there's a chemical for that we can control that, we can treat that. However, as we now know, TR4 is one of those ones that it cannot be controlled by chemicals. More awareness of the seriousness of TR4 after China and Philippines tour. So it started changing for us after I came back from that tour. And it all changed in our business in March 2015. And now every decision we make in terms of the future of our business, where do we plant more bananas, what do we do, biosecurity is a key part of that decision and discussion and consideration moving forward. Changes over the industry over time. I've did a little timeline here just to get an understanding of some of the challenges the industry's faced over the last 100 years, but more recently as well. Early in the 1900s, a banana bunchy top virus was detected, I think, down here in southeast Queensland. 2001, black Sigatoka incursion into Tully, and it was successfully eradicated, I think, in 2004. It's the only place in the world, I think, that black Sigatoka has been successfully eradicated. March 2006, Cyclone Larry decimated about 90% of the industry. June the same year, the Philippine banana import application was received by the Australian government and successfully fought by the industry based on the scientific argument. and biosecurity argument. 2011 was Cyclone Yassi. That wiped out again about 90% of the industry. 2013, banana freckle incursion in Northern Territory. 2015 was tropical race 4. And in amongst all that, from around 2010 to about 18 months ago, there was prolonged periods of at cost or below cost production in any business, not just farming. That's hard, and that's something that if we can understand that, that's certainly been a challenge to businesses adopting any changes, is that change does cost money. And we've thought about, are we going to even be farming bananas in 5 years' time? Is this a sustainable industry to stay in? Do we invest this sort of money? Is it going to be sustainable with these returns that we've been getting? The last 18 months has been better, but it has been a real challenge for our business remaining afloat with the pressure of TR4 in the background as well. And that was probably one of the key challenges, I think. Taking our focus away has been and still is to a point is sustainability in those times. So across the industry, prior to TR4, there was procedures in place for biosecurity, with those planting permits in place, ICA requirements consigning fruit into state. There still is those requirements in place for some states. Previous incursions, however, were eradicatable diseases for the most part. So TR4 was different in that way. There's little grower focus on soil and movement and sharing equipment. We're all guilty of it. We were all guilty of it. 98, 99% of us were guilty of sharing equipment, and not so much planting material, but definitely equipment. Farmers, if someone says, hey, you've got a plant, a ripper, a plant or something, can I borrow it? Yeah, sure. We would clean the equipment off, but we certainly wouldn't decontaminate it. I think everybody, or most people in the industry at the time before TR4, were guilty of that at some point. Across the industry post TR4, the initial detection did catch industry and BQ off guard. I think that's a fair comment to say that other things were taking our focus and BQ's focus away from it. Yes, TR4 was in Darwin, but it wasn't deemed as, I think it was thought to be further away than that, and that it was an outside chance. It was a risk, but not a massive risk. There was inconsistent advice on what to do. It was very confusing for us, for our business. Where was the disease? How fast will it spread? Do we have it already and just don't know? What do we do if we get it? There was a lot of different conflicting information out there, and the industry and BQ did work very hard in those early days to get the information sorted, to get some good, solid information out there on what we could do in terms of protecting our business, protecting the industry. Come clean, go clean. How do we do that? There's a lot of different information out there about just the chemical in the wheel dips, the wheel treatments, Pathex, spore kill, farm cleanse, and so work was done on that very early to determine and to give us information to make informed decisions, which is very important. The false positive in Mareeba didn't help. I think it's fair to say it eroded confidence in the system, and that's it's a difficult one. And like I said, it wasn't a good time for the industry. There was a lot of information out there that was not helping. A lot of confusion. The detections in 2017 and 18 seem to be handled much better. I think that goes without saying. There were protocols in place by then, and those businesses, I think, that had the detections were able to prepare a lot better, and they had a lot of support from BQ and that in preparing themselves for the incursion. And I think it was a very good, as good as it could be, an outcome. Recent meetings and workshops have been very well organised, so the importance of BQ and ABGC support for growers like ourselves is critical. I go to meetings, and from the last few, they're very well organised. There's good information out there about TR4. I think it was interesting to note. I think it was Ecuador had a delegation to the recent banana growers the banana industry conference in the Gold Coast this year. So the world is watching what we do. And I think what we are doing is working. I'll go into that a little bit further along, but it seems to be working. I think there's very good information out there, good research being done on TR4s from our perspective, information that we can use to make informed decisions. Continued industry engagement from BQ, ABGC is critical. I think that goes without saying that, at one of these meetings last year I went to, the facilitator said, put your hand up those who have internal segregation. We had the wheel dit, we had the fencing, we had everything. We had that sorted, but they put their hand up, they said, put your hand up those who have got internal segregation on your farm, and I couldn't put my hand up because we didn't have it. So that afternoon, the next day, I went back and started putting just temporary temporary bunting up and started thinking about it. And now we have that in place. It's temporary and we're making that permanent, but it's changed the staff's way of thinking and our way of thinking and operating, that, hey, that will be blocked off, that won't be there, that's there now. And that was because of going to a workshop, and I think that's there's no silver bullet solution to getting people to adopt change, but this is one way of doing it, is to keep the message out there to growers, and eventually those that want to change will. Cost to our business. So the initial infrastructure cost, the wheel dit, the fencing, etc., the boot change facility, was around $150,000. The ongoing costs between changes to procedures, the way we do things, but also maintaining the facilities that we have and staff to maintain those is around, we've estimated for around $100,000 a year. And future infrastructure costs, like I said, the permanent segregation, the changing of the layout of the packing shed in some ways, we've identified those changes to be around $150,000. That, in comparison to the cost of getting the disease. Decreased land value is a big one, and it's an unknown one. I think Tully is, I think it has had an effect on the land value down there, but the Atherton tablelands, it's a real concern for us as well. What will it do to our land value if we get if we become a quarantine property? Reduced cropping area, that goes without saying that infested areas have to be removed. Reduced income turnover, and staff lose their jobs. Some staff may lose their job if we stop farming bananas altogether. All staff will lose their job. And with those combined are much greater than the one-off costs and the ongoing costs. But don't be fooled. It's a hard one for me to go in front of the business and say, hey, we know we need to spend another $20,000, another $30,000. It's not just, yes, here you go and spend it. It's a big one. It's an investment. We see it as an investment into our future to allow us to continue farming bananas, but other businesses may not see it that way, and that's fair enough. It's their prerogative of how they see things, but it's not an easy one every time to say this is for biosecurity, and you won't see an instant return on investment, but it's a long-term return on investment, and that's the way we see it. But every time that I do go in front of a business and say, hey, I need to spend more, it's scrutinised. And but not only that, it's these costs are financial. It's the emotional stress as well, the emotional cost that is hard to put a figure on. So. Unexpected improvements. It was a hard one to I was asked to put in here, what are the unexpected improvements from biosecurity? And it's a hard one to put down on paper, but the information's out there. Better soil health means it means that plant has a better chance with this disease. And we were doing things to amend our soil health prior to TR4, but we've had a renewed emphasis on that. And look, our yields this year are better than last year. And I think that's in no small part due to an improving soil health. So, we do things with mulch, with putting the mulch back into the banana rows and apply organic products, and that to improve our soil health. And I think that is definitely having an effect on the yields. And that is in no small part because biosecurity and the information out there that a good soil health and healthy plants means that you have a better chance against the disease. Less traffic in and out of the farm, reduced noise and dust pollution. That's been a very big benefit actually, not only for mum and dad living on the farm, but for our business as well, the packing shed and dust around the yard. Staff awareness. So early on in this detection, we've always included our staff, because in any changes that we're going to have, because the ones that enact those changes will be the staff, and the ones that will keep that going from day to day is the staff. Being up there when they come in the morning, changing boots. I'm not there to watch all 50 people come in and out of the farm every day. Other people are there, and empowering them to say, hey, if someone's doing the wrong thing, hey, change your boots, and so including them in those decisions gives them a sense of ownership of this issue in particular. And that's a hard one, because, like I said, I can't do it all, and without our staff, it wouldn't happen. So ongoing challenges within our business. So maintaining awareness and emphasise the importance of good on-farm biosecurity. Avoid TR4 fatigue. I think it's been around for 4 years now, and luckily for us, for the industry, it's only been detected on 3 properties. So the complacency can creep in, and from time to time, even in our business, it does creep in. And people say, oh, well, it's not here, it's down in Tully. Well, it's only a car ride away. It's not, it's, yes, as the crow flies, if you have to walk it, it's a fair way, but it's only a car or truck ride away. It's not that far from, you have to assume it's next door, it's close. Justifying the cost during prolonged periods of low returns. I've covered that pretty well, I think, and that is a big one, and it's ongoing. Preparing and planning for the incursion. So that takes a lot of thinking. There are still other challenges in the industry, not just TR4, and so putting time in to plan and think about the next steps. Continuing to prepare our business for an incursion or to keep it out. It takes time, and it takes a lot of thinking. Have we covered all bases? What about this? What about that? And again, that's why it's important that we include our key staff members in particular to help us see things that we don't. Challenges within the industry. I guess there's no answer for this at the moment, but these are challenges that we do and will have to face within the industry in the future, in the near or medium or long term. We just don't know yet. But then what if the next detection is a mixed farming operation, i.e. bananas and sugar cane? What happens then? Getting more businesses to adopt better biosecurity practices. I got asked this last week. I did a presentation last week on this, a practice run, and it was asked, how do we get more farms, businesses to adopt better biosecurity practices? I don't know. There's no silver bullet answer. There's no silver bullet solution. I think it's maintaining the intensity, maintaining the message out there in the community, and it's particular to the industry that this is not going away. It's not eradicatable. It's not a. There's a lot of theories out there. There's people out there saying that it's not even there. That it's a conspiracy or something like that. But thankfully, not a lot. But it's not forcing, and it's not through more legislation. I don't think. I think it's through maintaining the message and keeping the message out there that you need to do something. Anything is better than nothing, and that you have to start somewhere. When are the triggers going to be activated for a zonal approach to control and containment? Again, another big one that we will have to face at some stage. And formulating an industry code of practice endorsed by all stakeholders and government to be legally binding. I think this is an important one as well. Again, hopefully it can be enforced through current legislation without the need for more legislation. Value of biosecurity to our business. Not just to our business, but I think every business in the industry. The current strategy has limited the spread. I think that's a pretty fair comment to say that the current biosecurity strategy has limited the spread of the disease. Hard to put a figure on. If you went back in time and had no protocols in place, what would happen? But examples in other countries, I think Mozambique's a good example where it was a few plants were found at one point, and then 6 months later there's a few 100,000 plants infested. So without the current strategies in place, and strategies that were in place at the start but have been improved vastly since then, I think it's fair to say that without those strategies, we would have a very different looking banana industry. So to our business, that's important because it allows us to keep farming bananas and it gives us that confidence that we can continue farming. The new protocols mean that we can minimise the exposure by protecting ourselves and continue to pack with the disease. So protecting ourselves, 6 months ago I went to a meeting where there was discussions around the co-investment by the industry, and it was people talking about forcing growers to do more, making them do more and forcing them to do more. I think it's about protecting yourself, and I think the biosecurity obligations are pretty clear around that. It's about protecting yourself. Yes, it's about by protecting yourself, you protect the industry as well, come clean, go clean. But our thinking has been, we have to protect ourselves, and also we have to prepare for a possible incursion. So those protocols give us that very clear guidelines on what we can work towards and how to do that. The current program continues to raise awareness to all industry stakeholders, so I think the program, it does a great job in keeping the message out there. And like I said, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of that. And overall, it means we can still farm bananas. We want to still farm bananas. I think everyone in the industry wants to continue farming bananas. It is a good industry. It's year-round, 52 weeks a year we pack. So we can have a good staff, we keep staff, retain staff, train staff. We use them in other parts of our business, into the avocado business. Bananas is a good training ground for that, and it works well in our business. So, if that was to disappear in our business, it'd change drastically if the bananas were to no longer be part of our business. It's around, in terms of turnover, it's around 70 to 80% of our business still. Future of banana farming in Australia. I think the continuation of the risk-based surveillance of properties is an important one with limited resources that there is. I think the risk-based surveillance of the properties is certainly a good strategy. I think the continuation of control and containment strategy for as long as industry and beekeeping deem practical seems to be working so far. Government and industry working together. Malcolm talked about this, partnerships. There's a new partnership between the Australian banana industry and government, and I think that is a really good step forward, move forward. I think that without working together, it's a very hard road, and I think now with this partnership, they both have a vested interest in the program, and farmers and the industry already has invested a lot into the program, into biosecurity, into the investments we've made on farm and other businesses made on their farms. And now the industry buying into this as well, I think it's putting an even more vested interest into this program. Different varieties. So I think that it's fair to say that the industry will look different in the near future. Maybe medium, maybe long term, we don't know. In the next 5 to 10 years, I'm going up to Darwin this evening. Tomorrow we're looking at some banana growers looking at the screening trials in Darwin with the new varieties in how they stand up against Panama disease. So there is varieties out there. They're not, I don't think there's any commercially viable varieties out there yet that we know about that have come out, stood out and said this is a good replacement for Cavendish Williams. Cavendish Williams is a great variety. It produces well, it travels well, and it eats well, and so and it gives a good it can give a good return. So finding a variety that does the same is hard. It's challenging, but I think the future of the industry is that there will be a new variety or varieties out there that will may look and taste different to the Cavendish Williams. We need to slow the spread to buy time. I think that's fair. It goes without saying. We need to buy time for the industry to allow us as growers to if a variety is found, that we can eventually transition to that variety should the need be there. But also finding and screening that variety. These trials take 5-10 years. So we've bought ourselves time so far, but we need to keep buying time to allow the industry to change and to survive without the pressure of imports. Banana growers and the industry are resilient. I think the slide I showed with the timeline shows that we can adapt to change and that we are adapting to change, but like the previous point says, we need time and we need to slow the spread to buy time to change. And finally, there is a long-term future for the banana industry. It's a bright future, and maybe this little guy will be part of it, I hope, one day. Thank you.